The first scene of Quentin Tarantino's sixth film, Inglorious Basterds, opens with a wide establishing shot of a perfectly serene small French farmhouse in a date, 1941. What the audience does not know is they are about to witness a masterpiece in rising tension through both shot composition and the work of master editor Sally Menke in her last collaboration with Tarantino before her death. Here is Once Upon a Time in Nazi-occupied France, one of the best examples of creating rising tension through sharp editing or oftentimes the lack of the need for it. The scene begins with an iconic wide shot. It not only shows where the scene is about to take place, but also sets the mood and shows important details that will be needed later in the scene, such as the man with the axe, the laundry hanging on the clothesline, and the road adjacent to the house. The next shot shows us from a low angle that the man is the subject of the scene, and frames the log in the house in such a way that clarifies we are in the same location. We cut away to a young woman hanging laundry, and then we hear the sounds of distant engines, a good use of sound designed to indicate something unseen. She then moves the laundry to the left to reveal an approaching motorcade. Menke lingers on this shot long enough for Julie to process the image and reveal her reaction to it. The intensifying volume and sudden entrance of the somber piano also indicates a sort of morose presence approaching. We then cut back to the same low-angle shot of the man with the axe to see his reaction and then to his point of view of the incoming motorcade. Menke stays on his expression long enough to indicate his worry through both his expression and his physical motion of lowering the axe, and we therefore understand his mindset better. We then cut to the next shot, a medium shot consisting of the man and the house on his right side, better establishing the sense of space. Julie is shown frantically rushing to retrieve the water while the man sits calmly, watching the slowly approaching vehicles. This contrast in imagery between the foreground and background represents the internal emotions of the man, who, while appearing calm, may be experiencing panic on the inside. The next shot, a low wide-angle shot of Julie collecting the water, even more enunciates the isolation of the setting by showing us a wide-open field behind her, indicating that there is in fact no place to run or hide. Next we cut to the first real close-up of the man, Perrier. He is shown staring in the direction of the incoming Nazi troops. At first he seems simply worried, but then presses the handkerchief to his face. The handkerchief is clearly important to him as Menke holds the shot long enough for us to see his eyes move down towards it and see him raise it to his nose. This brief close-up makes us care for the character, especially if we sense that they miss somebody they love or fears for loved ones. In this case, both seem true. The Nazis are then shown distant and slow-moving in their approach towards him. A slowly approaching enemy tells the audience that the scene will be tense and makes the enemy seem calm and powerful. Paired with the calming yet suspicious piano melody, this is enunciated even more so. Perrier is now included in the shot, so we are to believe the Nazis are in fact approaching him directly. We switch between these same progression of shots as we see Julie return with the bucket of water and Perrier slowly put his handkerchief away and make his way towards the house. The Nazis still advance slowly, seemingly never making much ground. Their approach seems endless to both the audience and the characters. The tension has already started to build and there is no clear conflict even remotely present. Tarantino sets up this shot so precisely that we see Perrier chopping, the axe freeze in midair, and then with the use of a simple tilt we see the grass, distant hills, and the house where the conflict will take place, making the job of Menke slightly easier when trying to decide between multiple takes and angles to best establish the setting. Rather than shooting lots of coverage, he designed shots that reveal more as the scene goes on using simple pans and tilts. Perrier is next shown in a medium shot at about shoulder height. While his pace emulates calmness, his body language actually tells us something different. Menke remains on the shot long enough for us to see him glance at the reflection of the Nazis in the window and lower his head. His shoulders are tense and his movements are subtle, indicating his level of uncomfort in his current situation, especially since the music has now faded out to an empty silence only populated by the incoming engines. A great example of sound editing to build even more tension. He is then shown in a close-up attempting to wash off in the wash basin set against the wall of the house. The important thing is that while he appears to wash off, he actually remains dirtied and unclean compared to the pristine Nazis in their uniforms shown in the next shot. The first time we are shown the Nazis full-framed, the enemy has been coming for some time, but Christoph Waltz is pictured tiny in the frame and even walks and talks with a spring in his step as he approaches Perrier on foot. This creates a far more menacing tone than a frightening close-up. Next we are shown Colonel Landa approaching Perrier in a medium-angle tracking shot. The shot is set up so that the track following Landa actually follows him at an outward angle, cheating out so that it eventually reframes both he and Perrier in a wide shot, without the need to ever do a shot change. Again, Tarantino making it easier for Menke to show a lot more with a lot less cuts. By remaining on one shot of Landa making his way through the yard past the clothesline and axe, it indicates that he is invading the personal space we as an audience have attributed to Perrier and his daughters. He is as much an imposter in the space to the audience as he is to the characters. Cut to an insert shot of Landa's hand extended towards Perrier in greeting and remain on the shot long enough to see both the entrance of Landa's hand into the frame, already open and fully extended, and then the ever so slight pause and hesitation of Perrier's hand as he returns the extension. The framing of the next shot is important, as when characters meet for the first time, we should see them both in the same frame, with a wide enough angle to see both their body language but close enough to make out facial expressions. Here we truly see the difference in the two men's demeanors, with Landa's sinister smile and straight-laced posture compared to Perrier's somber expression and tense posture, with one hand resting in his pocket while the other holds Landa's. You'll notice Menke remains on this shot longer than most. In fact, the entirety of the brief exchange between them is shown in this one shot until they begin to exit the frame to the right. You'll also notice how remaining in this stagnant position allows us to better read the characters and how they relate to each other and the power struggle between them represented by the extensively long handshake. Rather than cutting to over-the-shoulder shots or another type of framing two-way conversations, neither man breaks eye contact nor releases their physical grips on each other, as that would signify weakness in the relationship. You see, there is barely a moment where Landa's hand is not on Perrier, as if leading him in a certain direction in an authoritative manner. Once Landa enters the house, we are shown the perspective of the three daughters. First, we see Perrier enter the doorway, who shoots a nervous glance in the direction of his daughters, followed closely by Landa, who pauses and observes the girls for a moment before he approaches the one furthest left. The daughters are shown in a quick cut, centrally framed as to emphasize their sense of being observed. Each of them is in relatively the same position, but with unique physicalizations showing their different levels of emotion. Also, quickly note the inclusion of the table in the lower right corner of the frame. It is always important to include part of where the majority of the scene will take place in the opening shots, in this case the table, as it is better to establish the space of the scene. The camera follows him across the room with a simple dolly to the left and reframes the scene, clearly showing us the Nazis through the window in the center of the frame, indicating the looming danger of the situation for both us as an audience and the characters in the scene. This and Landa now represent a barrier between Perrier and his daughters, and he appears to be cut off and powerless during this scene as he remains in the corner, while Landa greets and observes his daughter in the same framing as before. This subtle symbolism cranks up the tension. With a quick reaction shot of Léa Seydoux expressing her dislike but unrelenting respect towards Landa, we cut back to the same shot as Landa continues to ogle the young women until Perrier offers him a seat. We then return to the earlier shot of the three women centrally framed as Landa sets his hat down on the table. With a simple tilt to the right, more of the sense of space is established.
Mais non, merci beaucoup, monsieur. La petite pâte de vin. Puisque nous sommes sur une exploitation laitière, je suppose sans risque de me tromper que vous avez du lait?
Cut back to Landa sitting at the table, still maintaining eye contact with Seydoux. Menke uses close-ups sparingly and only when trying to reveal a character's internal feelings, so when cutting to Seydoux's expression and glance towards the left at Perrier after she breaks her stare with Landa, it indicates her inquiry into what exactly she should do and exactly how much danger they are really in. We then cut back to Perrier with Julie standing in the background. The window is now closed, perhaps inferring some attempt by Perrier at maintaining control in his own home. Cut back to Landa, who is still the only one seated. The framing is now shot from a low angle, which gives him a sense of power over the others, as we cannot see their expressions. The shot remains on him as he finishes the entire glass of milk. It goes on for almost 30 seconds and does not move its focus off of Landa. This allows him to take his time and assert his dominance over Perrier and his daughters, who are forced to wait and see the reason why he was truly there. While his words may appear friendly and appreciated, his demeanor exudes the opposite. We then cut briefly between these two previous shots as Landa invites Perrier to sit down, yet another method of his to undermine the authority of Perrier in his own home. We then cut to a medium shot with the camera placed low and level with Landa's head, indicating that he is in charge of the scene. Keeping the camera at the head height of the character and control of the situation emphasizes their authority. It pans as Perrier approaches the table slowly and sits down. Landa leans into the center of the frame as to become face-to-face with Perrier. While we can still see the daughters lingering in the background, the central and unflinching framing of the two men indicate that the coming conflict that has been building will be between these two. A medium shot like this is an excellent way to connect two characters while still showing the surrounding characters. Here we have finally reached the boiling point of this scene, and while nothing significant has happened in the story itself, the audience is all the while feeling more on edge than they ever expected to. This scene, through both its shot composition and editing style, is a perfect example of building tension within a scene.
Monsieur Lapadite, je suis au regret de vous informer que j'ai épuisé l'étendue de mon français. Continuer à le parler si peu convenablement ne ferait que me gêner. Cependant, je crois savoir que vous parlez un anglais tout à fait correct, n'est-ce pas?
Oui.
Ma foi, il se trouve que moi aussi. Puisque nous sommes ici chez vous, je vous demande la permission de passer à l'anglais pour le reste de la conversation.
Certainement.